The secret that kept a marriage alive. A golden celebration. The grand banquet hall shimmered with golden lights, casting a warm glow over the gathering of family and friends. Lush floral arrangements adorned the tables, and the air buzzed with excitement. It was a night of celebration. Richard and Eleanor Calloway's 50th wedding anniversary. Their children had planned the event down to the last detail, ensuring everything was perfect, just like their parents' seemingly flawless marriage. A towering golden cake stood as the centerpiece. The words, 50 Years of Love, written in elegant script. A slideshow projected images of their journey together, wedding pictures, the birth of their children, family vacations, and the simple, beautiful moments that made up a lifetime of love. Richard and Eleanor sat at the center of it all, hands intertwined, their eyes reflecting the depth of their shared past. Their love story was one of devotion, the kind that younger generations admired and aspired to. But what no one knew, what had remained hidden for 5 decades, was the secret that had nearly torn them apart. And tonight, that secret would finally be revealed. Richard stood, tapping his champagne glass, signaling for silence. The guests quieted, eager to hear him speak. Eleanor turned to him, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you all," he began, his voice steady but carrying an unmistakable weight. "Something that only Eleanor and I have known all these years. And I think tonight is the right time to share it." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Their grandchildren leaned forward in anticipation. Their children exchanged puzzled glances, wondering what secret their father had kept from them. Richard turned to Eleanor. She met his gaze and nodded, giving him silent permission to continue. And so he began, the perfect beginning. The summer of 1972 was one of long golden days and stolen kisses. Eleanor was the town's golden girl, smart, kind, and the beloved daughter of a local baker. Richard was the quiet, serious young man who had just returned from serving in the army, carrying the weight of a world far bigger than their small town of Willow Creek. Their love was the kind that novels were written about: instant, passionate, and unshakable. Richard was mesmerized by Eleanor's laughter, by the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her dreams. Eleanor found comfort in Richard's steady presence, his silent strength. Within a year, they were married, exchanging vows under the sprawling oak tree behind her parents' bakery. It was a simple ceremony attended only by close family and friends. They promised to love and cherish each other for all their days. Life was good. Richard found work at the local steel factory, and Eleanor helped her father with the bakery. They spent quiet evenings by the lake, whispering dreams of the future: children, a home, growing old together. It was perfect. until the Ichaman letter arrived. The letter that changed everything. One crisp autumn evening, Eleanor was setting the table for dinner when Richard walked in, his face pale, gripping an envelope in his hand. "This came today," he said, voice tight. Eleanor frowned, wiping her hands on her apron before taking the envelope. She could feel Richard's tension radiating off him like a storm about to break. As she read the letter, her breath caught in her throat. It was from the government. Richard was being recalled for a classified mission. A mission he couldn't refuse. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "This can't be happening. You served your time. You came home." Richard swallowed hard. "I don't have a choice, Ellie." Tears welled in her eyes. "But we just started our life together." Richard pulled her into his arms, holding her as tightly as if he could somehow keep the world from taking him away. That night, they lay awake, wrapped around each other, as if afraid that if they let go, they'd never find their way back. And a week later, Richard was gone, vanished without a trace. At first, there were letters, short, carefully worded messages that offered little detail, but reassured Eleanor that he was safe. But as the months passed, the letters grew less frequent. And then, one day, they stopped altogether. Eleanor wrote letter after letter, no response. She made phone calls, no answers. Then, after nearly a year of silence, she received the visitee. A man in a black suit arrived at her doorstep, his face unreadable. "We regret to inform you that Richard Calloway is a missing in action." Eleanor's world shattered. She refused to believe it, refused to accept it. She demanded answers, but the government remained silent. "Mission classified," they told her. For 5 years. She waited. 5 years of loneliness. 5 years of aching for a man who had disappeared into the unknown. Until one evening, there was a knock at the door. The man who returned, Eleanor, froze. Her heart pounded as she opened the door, and there, standing before her, was Richard. But he was not the same man who had left. His hair was like grayer, his face lined with exhaustion. His eyes, once full of warmth, held a darkness she didn't recognize. He looked like a man who had walked through hell and barely made it back. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. "Richard?" He reached out, touching her cheek, as if he wasn't sure she was real. "It's me, Ellie." She threw herself into his arms, sobbing. But even in the joy of reunion, she knew something was terribly wrong. Richard never spoke of where he had been. When she asked, his jaw would tighten. "I can't tell you," he would whisper. "I wish I could." She saw one of the scars on his back, the way he would wake up, screaming in the night, the way he would flinch at loud noises, how his eyes constantly scanned the shadows, as if expecting someone or something to come for him. But despite it all, she stayed. She chose him, even when she didn't understand him. And together, they built a life. The truth, after 50 years, back in the kid's present, Richard's voice trembled as he spoke. I was taken, he finally admitted. I was part of something I can't fully explain. And when I finally escaped, I was given a choice. Come home and pretend those years never happened, or risk losing everything. A gasp rippled through the room. Eleanor gripped his hand. I chose her, Richard said, voice thick with emotion. I chose us. And I carried that secret for 50 years because I didn't want the past to steal the future we built. His grandchildren sat in Hafrinisek stunned silence. His children stared and, oh. Eleanor finally spoke. And that, she said softly, is what love truly is. Not laissez perfection. Not moivseurista, fairy tales. But the choice to stand by someone, even when you don't have all the answers. Yes. A hush fell over the room. Then, one by one, their Ser family rose to their feet, clapping. And at the center of it all, Richard and Eleanor held each other's hands, just as they had for the past 50 years. Bound by the love, sacrifice, and an unspoken secret that had kept their marriage alive